为什么？我呆住了啊！有，晚上好，感谢死鱼的150元，ありがとう。爱死鱼宝宝，死鱼宝宝，妈咪亲亲，妈咪抱抱，今晚要好好睡觉哦。感谢一晨的330元，ありがとう。一晨宝宝抱抱，亲亲，好好睡觉。感谢叶晨加入了配舞创业家，这是第几个月了，ありがとう。Your outfit's great, thank you. Smile. 跟大家打招呼，柚子晚上好，小青晚上好，死鱼晚上好，西鱼晚上好，然后还有修晚上好 ，Hi Foxy or Iris， 然后 Offer 晚上好，叶城晚上好，天哥晚上好，雨花晚上好，莱姆咖啡晚上好，水藤树晚上好，安的口酒晚上好。然后柴猫晚上好，喉咙还好吗？喉咙很好啊，宝宝。F3G 晚上好 ，Creeper Hola Hola ¿Cómo estás? I think I have to learn Chinese after watching your live stream. It's okay. We read English story today, so yeah. 感谢他们的50元，ありがとう。刚结束活動，準備坐車回家，辛苦了。寶寶回家好好躺。寶寶親親，我們親親，仲有啲瞓，快啲返屋企休息啦，寶寶。OK， 我們今天要念這個小王子。我想要開這個故事台，想要很久很久了，然後一直到現在都沒有開成功，今天終於開了，擱置了不知道多少次。我天啊，是我真的过气了吗？YT 最近怎么了？我感受到 YT 最近就是那个演算法非常的糟糕，非常的恐怖，怎么会这样子？不辛苦。柚子晚上好，然后易中安晚上好，取消一次而已，没有我记得是2次，因为封面什么的，我记得是2次。你的周边不知道寄去哪里了？你是姓蔡吗？我想问一下，宝宝，你姓蔡吗？我们现在有一份，好像是有一份号组，已经付钱了，但是没有取货。是的，原来是你。OK， 你可以到我的那个主页找到我的邮箱。然后你可以给我发个邮件，然后邮件里面就是把你的按惯例把你的那个产品编号输入一下，对，但你可能需要再付一次运费，对，因为那个运费是绿界那边寄出的，会再开一个卖场，会再开一个卖场，然后会因为有另外一个宝宝也忘记拿了，所以那个运费我会单开一个卖场的运费，然后你就可以下单。然后就会重新再寄给你这样子。杨刚晚上好，Brian 晚上好，找到蔡小姐了，是蔡小姐还是蔡先生？有点忘记那个名字了。OK，anyways， 我们今天要念小王子。先等我找回来一下下。我忘记开 BGM 了，是不是？我今天不要用这个，我就要用这个睡觉的 BGM。想怕会太大声还是什么的，可以听一下这个音量够不够？可以听一下。如果够的话呢，我们就要准备今天开始念故事啦。But I don't know much English either. I use translation app. Oh, then where are you from?上次的御守最近会出吗？你是说新年的御守吗？那个不会出，那个是活动限定的，只有少量的，对，那个不会出。你是说出货吗？出货那个应该4月份的时候你就会收到吧？你不知道怎么用没关系，不然你就私讯我 IG 好了。对， 如果你有周边的疑问，你也是可以私讯 IG 的，然后我看到的话我就会去回你。Vietnam， welcome。哇塞，弟晚上好，晚上好。念着念着会睡着吗？我不确定耶，会吗？小天安晚上好，日月明安晚上好。卡通，这是什么？看图识别吗？卡通。My automatic translation tool cannot translate it. Which one? Translate for what? 小天安晚上好。那我们今天就要念小王子咯。如果 BGM 没有问题的话呢，来看一下。OK， 等一下，我把界面调好。叶叶安晚上好，柯安晚上好，感谢柯的收音，哎呀都喝完酒被掉哄睡了，这是什么睡眠享受？飲完酒啊，咁樣好頭喎 ，BB 男男 ，BB 錫錫，早唞啦。飲完酒要早啲瞓喎。The Vietnamese people on social media are quite bad, especially Gen Z. I don't understand why they're like that. It's okay, but you're good, right? 好了，那我们现在要开始念故事啦。The Little Prince, Chapter 1. Once when I was 6 years old, I saw a magnificent picture in a book called True Story from Nature about a primeval forest. It was a picture of a boa constrictor in the act of swallowing an animal. Here's a copy of the drawing. In the book, it said, boa constrictors swallow their prey whole without chewing it, and after that, they're not able to move, and they sleep through the 6 months that they need for digestion. I pondered deeply, then over the adventures of the jungle. And day after, somewhat with a colored pencil, I succeeded in making my first drawing. My drawing number 1. It looked something like this. I showed my masterpiece to the grown-ups and asked them whether the drawing frightened them. But they answered, "Frightened? Why should anyone be frightened by a hat?" My drawing was not a picture of a hat. It was a picture of a boa constrictor digesting an elephant. But since the grown-ups were not able to understand it, I make another drawing. I drew the inside of a boa constrictor so that the grown-ups could see it clearly. They always need to have things explained. My drawing number 2 looked like this. The grown-up's response this time was to advise me to lay aside my drawing of a boa constrictor, whether from inside or the outside, and devote myself instead to geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar. That is why, at the age of 6, I gave up. I gave up what might have been a magnificent career as a painter. I had been disheartened by the failure of my drawing number 1 and my drawing number 2. Grown-ups never understand anything by themselves, and it is tiresome for children to be always and forever explaining things to them. So then, I chose another profession and learned to pilot airplanes. I've flown a little over all parts of the world, and it is true that geography has been very useful to me. At a glance, I can distinguish China from Arizona. If one gets lost in the night, such knowledge is valuable. 新长安晚上好，然后阿雅安晚上好。 Your voice sounds like ASMR, thank you. Hi, Coliver. I like animated sculptured cultivation themes. The panda-headed character look both adorable and funny. Single Bay 安晚上好。阿 Sam BB 早晨，係阿 Sam 嘅唔就問哪裡入到 BB 早啲瞓覺啦，今晚 B 婆婆 B 錫錫。小公安晚上好 The best who bests Hi I4N 安晚上好 In the course of this life, I have had a great many encounters with a great many people who have been concerned with matter of consequence. I have lived a great deal among grown-ups. I've seen them intimately, close at hand, and that hasn't much improved my opinion of them. Whenever I met one of them who seemed to me at all clear-sighted, I tried the experiment of showing him my drawing number 1, which I have always kept. I would try to find out. So, if this was a person of true understanding, but whoever it was, he or she would always say, "That's a hat." 感謝金哥杯的150啊，你感動。金哥杯寶寶今晚也要早點睡覺，媽咪抱抱，媽咪親親，媽媽，早點休息。每天都是氣質溫柔，對的。Because there are simplified Chinese and traditional Chinese, the two versions of Chinese. In Chinese, whenever I met one of them who seemed to me at all clear-sight, that's a hat. Then I would never talk to that person about boa constructors, or forests, or stars. I would bring myself down to his level, and I would like to talk to him about the bridges, the golf, and politics, and neckties. And a grown-up would be greatly pleased to have met such sensible men. Chapter 2阿爸爸在干嘛？感謝阿爸爸的1000元，謝謝寶寶。謝謝寶寶，謝謝爸爸寶寶的，然後你說爸爸寶寶抱抱，親親，早點睡覺，早點睡好嗎？ The Little Prince, Chapter 2. So, I lived my life alone, without anyone that I could really talk to, until I had an accident with my plane in the desert of Sahara. 6 years ago, something was broken in my engine, and as I had with me neither a mechanic nor any passengers, I set myself to attempt the difficult repairs all alone. It was a question of life or death for me. I had scarcely enough drinking water to last a week. The first night, then, I went to sleep on the sand, 1,000 miles from any human habitation. I was more isolated than a shipwrecked sailor on a raft in the middle of the ocean. Thus, you can imagine my amazement at sunrise, when I was awakened by an old little voice. It said, "If you please, draw me a shape." What? Draw me a shape? I jumped to my feet, completely thunderstruck. I blinked my eyes hard. I looked carefully all around me, and I saw a most extraordinary small person who stood there, examining me with great seriousness. Here you may see the best portrait that. Later, I was able to make of him, but my drawing is certainly very much less charming than its model. That, however, is not my fault. The grown-ups discouraged me in my painter career when I was 6 years old, and I never learned to draw anything except boa from outside and boas from inside. Now, I started at the sudden apparitions, with my eyes fairly starting out of my head in astonishment. Remember, I had crushed in the desert 1,000 miles from any inhabited region, and yet my little man seems neither to be straying uncertainly among the sand, nor to be fainting from fatigue or hunger or thirst or fear. Nothing about him gave any suggestion of a children lost in the middle of the desert, 1,000 miles from any human habitation. OK， 突发状况刚刚。Hello， 狗子晚安，晚上好。还有咖喱面包安，晚上好。小公子也安，晚上好。你们 Stinky Tofu， I love that。When at last I was able to speak, I said to him, "But what are you doing here?" In the answer, he repeated very slowly, as if he were speaking of a matter of great consequence. "If you please, draw me a sheep." When a mystery is too overpowering, one dare not disobey. Absurd as this might seem to me, 1,000 miles from any human habitations and in danger of death, I took out my pocket, a sheet of paper, and my fountain pen. But then I remembered how my study has been concentrated on geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar. And I told the little chap, a little crossly too, that I didn't know how to draw. But then he answered me, "That doesn't matter. Draw me a sheep." But I have never drawn a sheep before, so I drew for him one of the two pictures I had drawn so often. It was that of the bow constructor from outside, and I was astounded to hear the little fellow greeted with, No, I do not want an elephant out inside a boa constructor. A boa constructor is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous creature, and an elephant is very cumbersome. Where I live, everything is very small, and what I need is a sheep. Just draw me a sheep." So then I make a drawing. He looked at it carefully, and he said, "No, this sheep is already very sickly. Make me another one." So I make another drawing. My friend smiled gently. "You see yourself," he said, "that this is not a sheep. This is a ram. It has horns." So then I did my drawing over once more. But it was rejected too, just like the others. "This one is too old. I want a sheep that will live long time." By the time my patience was exhausted, because I was in a hurry to start talking my engine apart, so I tossed off this jarring. And I threw out an explanation with it. This is only his box, the ship you asked for inside. I was very surprised to see the light break over the face of my young judge. That is exactly the way I wanted it. Do you think that the ship will have to have a great deal of grass? Why? Because where I live, everything is very small. There will surely be enough grass for him, I said. It is a very small ship that I've given to you. He bent his head over the drawing. Not so small that, look, he has gone to sleep. And that is how I made the acquaintance of a little prince. こんばんは。何も考えてないちゃんでる。こんばんは。Mainly because I use translation software that can convert languages so that I can only understand the basic. It's okay. 我应该这样子，你要把第几章打上，这样子我们就是每念一小章，然后就每念一小章就小聊一下这样。MC9393，不是我要讲今天的 YT 战斗书。喝口水先。还有几个人是活着的，举个手来看一下。Good. Okay. Now, The Little Prince, Chapter 3. It took me a long time to learn where he came from, the little prince, who asked me so many questions, never seems to hear once of the one I asked him. It was from words dropped by chance that, little by little, everything was revealed to me. The first time he saw my airplane, for instance, I shall not draw my airplane. That would be much too complicated for me. He asked me, "What is that object?" This is not an object. It flies. It is an airplane. It is my airplane. And I was proud to have him learn that I could fly. But then he cried out. Then, what? You dropped down from the sky? Yes, I answered, modestly. Oh, that is fun. And the little prince broke into a lovely peal of laughter, which irritated me very much. I like my misfortunes to be taken seriously. He then added, "So, you too come from the sky? Which is your planet?" At the moment I caught a gleam of light in an impenetrable mystery of his presence, and I demanded abruptly, "Do you come from another planet?" But he did not reply. He tossed his head gently without taking his eyes from my plane. It is true that that he can't have come from very far away. And he sank into a veil, which lasted a long time. Then, taking my shape out of his pocket, he buried himself in the contemplation of his treasure. You can imagine how my curiosity was aroused by this half-confidence about another planet. I made a great effort, therefore, to find out more on this subject. My little man, where do you come from? What is this where I live, of which you speak? Where do you want to take your shape? After a reflective silence, he answered, The thing that is so good about the box you have given me is that at night he can use it as his house. That is so. And if you are good, I'll give you a string too, so that you can tie him during the day, and a poles to tie him to. But the little prince seemed shocked by this offer. Tie him? That's not what a cure idea. But if you don't tie him, I said, he will wander off someday and get lost. My friend broke into another peal of laughter. But where do you think he'll go? Anywhere, straight ahead of him. Then the little prince said earnestly, That doesn't matter. Where I live, everything is so small. And with perhaps a hint of sadness, he added, Straight ahead of him, nobody can go very far. Alex 晚上好，明明把聲咁好聽，點解越聽越想瞓？因為就係要氹你瞓覺啦 ，BB。發現一件事情，就是呢，我不能，我放棄了，我放棄模仿這個 British accent 了，因為我發現，如果我越想要模仿這個 British accent 的話，就會越不倫不類。我還是算了。我已經沒辦法再用就是正常的那個 British accent 講話了，我們現在變成美國 Valley Girl you know yeah 算了沒辦法了，我本來很想要就是很 elegant 的很優雅的很優雅的用這個 British accent 破粗佛車來念這個故事。累了嗎？沒有很累的寶寶。平凡的貓奴晚上好。對，我們還是多捲一點舌吧。等一下 OK 第4章 The Little Prince Chapter 4 I have thus learned a second fact of great importance. That was that the planet the little prince came from was scarcely any larger than a house. But that did not really surprise me much. I knew very well that in addition to the great planets, such as Earth, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, to which we have given names, there are also hundreds of others, some of which are so small that one has hard time seeing them through the telescope. When an astronomer discovers one of these, he does not give it a name, but only a number. He might call it, for example, Asteroid 325. I have serious reason to believe that the planet from which the little prince came from is the asteroid known as B612. This asteroid has only once been seen through the telescope. That was by a Turkish astronomer in 1991. On making his discovery, the astronomer has presented it to International Astronomical Congress in a great demonstration. But he was in Turkish costume, so nobody would believe what he said. Dramas are like that. Fortunately, however, for reputation of asteroid B612, the Turkish dictator made a law that his subjects, under pain of death, 等一下哦，希望那个声音没有吵醒你，等我一下。抱歉，我妈一回家就是乒乒乓乓的。我有边喝水边那个。Hello Verify 啊，晚上好。びっくりした、ごめんね。Fortunately, however, for the reputation of asteroid B612, a Turkish dictator made a law that his subjects under the pain of death should change the European costume. So, in 1920, the astronomer gave his demonstrations all over again, dressed with impressive style and elegance. And this time, everybody accepted his report. If I have told you these details about the asteroid and make a note of its number for you, it is on account of grown-ups and their ways. When you tell them that you have made a new friend, they never ask you any questions about essential matters. They never say to you, "What does his voice sound like? What games does he love best? Does he collect butterflies?" Instead, they demand, "How old is he?" 等一下。好了，我回来了。念到哪里了？忘记我念到哪里了，好像很激动。谁 ？Instead, they demand, "How old is he? How many brothers has he? How much does he weigh? How much money does his father make?" Only from this figure do they think that they have learned anything about him. If you were to say to grown-ups, "I saw a beautiful house made of rosy brick with geranium in the windows and doves on the roof," they would not be able to get any idea of that house at all. You would have to say to them, "I saw a house that costs 20,000. Then they would exclaim, Oh, what a pretty hat it is. Just so, you might say to them, the proof that the little prince exists is that he was charming, that he laughed, and that he was looking for a sheep. If anybody wants a sheep, that's a proof that he exists. And what good would it do to tell them that? They would shrug their shoulders and treat you like a child. But if you said to them, the planet he came from is asteroid B612. Oh my god, Jesus. 再躺一次。Yeah, that's why 开哄睡台就是会有这个烦恼，这是背景的一环，是But if you said to them, the planet he came from is asteroid B6012, then they would be convinced and leave you in peace from their questions. You're like that. Once but not hold it against them. Children should always show great forbearance toward grown-up people. But certainly, for us who understand life, figures are a matter of indifference. I should have liked to begin the story in the fashion of fairy tales. I should have liked to say, once upon a time, there was a little prince who lived on a planet that was scarcely any bigger than himself, and who had need of a sheep. To those who understand life, that would have given much greater air of truth to my story. For I do not want anyone to read my book carelessly. I have suffered too much grief in setting down these memories. 6 years have already passed since my friend went away from me with his ship. If I try to describe him here, it is to make sure that I shall not forget him. To forget a friend is sad. Not everyone has a friend. And if I forget him, I may become like the grown-ups who are no longer interested in anything but figures. It is for that purpose, again, that I have bought a box of paint and some pencils. It is hard to take drawing again at my age, when I have never made any pictures except those of the boa constructor from the outside and the boa constructor from the inside since I was 6. I shall certainly try to make my portraits as true to life as possible, but I'm not at all sure of success. One drawing goes along all right, and another one has no resemblance to the subject. I make some errors too. In the little prince's height, in one place he's so tall, and in another it was too short. And I feel some doubts about the color of his costume, so I fumble along as best I can. Now good, now bad, and I hope generally fair to meeting. In certain more important details, I shall make mistakes also, but that is something that will not be my fault. My friend never explained anything to me. He thought, perhaps, that I was like himself, but I do not know how to see sheep through the walls of boxes. Perhaps I am a little like the grown-ups. I have to grow old. Chapter 5 你讲 B612 为什么出现了24601 Who am I? I mean, who am I? 24601哦，我们现在已经来到了 Chapter 5， 希望我们可以完整的、顺顺的念完一章，没有任何打扰的。早知道我就早点开了，但早点开好像就不是哄睡台的感觉哦。打个嗝。Little Prince, Chapter 5. As each day passed, I would learn and I would talk something about the Little Prince planet, his departure from it, his journey. The information would come very slowly, as it might chance to fall from his thoughts. It was in this way that I heard, on the third day, about the catastrophe of the baobab. This time, once more, I had the ship to thank for it. For the little prince asked me abruptly, as if seized by grave doubt. That is true, isn't it? That sheep eat little bushes. Yes, that is true. Ah, I'm glad. I did not understand why it is so important that sheep should eat little bushes, but the little prince added, then it follows that they also eat baobabs? I pointed out to the little prince that baobabs were not little bushes, but on the contrary, trees as big as castles, and that even if he took a whole herd of elephant to wait with him, the herd would not eat up one single baobab. The idea of the herd of elephants made the little prince laugh. We will have to put them one on the top of the other, he said. But he made a wise comment. Before they grow so big, the baobabs start out by being little. That is strictly correct, I said. But why do you want the sheep to eat the little baobabs? He answered me at once. Oh, come. As if he were speaking of something that was self-evident, and I was obliged to make a new mental effort to solve this problem without any assistance. Indeed, as I learned, they were on the planet where the little prince lived. As on all planets, good plants and bad plants. In consequence, there are good seeds from the good plants and bad seeds from the bad plants. But seeds are invisible. They sleep deep in the heart of the earth darkness until someone among them is seized with a desire to awaken. Then this little seed will scratch itself and begin timidly at first to push a charming little spring inoffensively upward toward the sun. And if it's only a sprout of radish or a spring of a rose bush, one would let it grow whenever it might wish. But when it is a black plant, one must destroy it as soon as possible, the very first instant that one recognized it. Now, there are some terrible seeds on the planet that was the home of the little prince. And these were the seed of the baobab. The soil of that planet was infested with them. A baobab is something you will never be able to get rid of it if you attend to it too late. It spreads over the entire planet. It bores clear through it and with its roots. And if the planet is too small, the baobabs are too many, they split it in pieces. It is a question of discipline, the little prince said to me later on. When you finish your own toilet in the morning, then it is time to attend the toilet of your planet. Just so, with the greatest care, you must see it that you pull regularly all the baobabs at the very first moment. At the very first moment, when they can be distinguished from the rose bushes, which they resemble so close in their earliest youth. It is very tedious work, the little prince added, but very easy. And one day, he said to me, you ought to make a beautiful drawing so that the children where you live can see exactly how all this is. That would be very useful to them if they were troubled someday. Sometimes, he added. There is no harm in putting off pieces of work until another day. 为什么我的舌头会在打结？ But when it is a matter of baobabs, that always means a catastrophe. I knew a planet that was inhabited by a lazy man. He neglected 3 little bushes. So, as the little prince described it to me, I have made a drawing of that planet. I do not much like to take the tone of moralist, but the danger of the baobabs is so little understood, and such considerable risks would be run by anyone who might get lost on the asteroid, that for once I'm breaking through my reserve. Children, I said plainly, watch out for the baobabs. My friends, like myself, have been skirting this danger for a long time, without even knowing it. And so, it is for them that I've worked so hard over this drawing. The lesson which I pass on by this means is worth all the trouble it has cost me. Perhaps you'll ask me, why are there no other drawing in this book as magnificent and impressive as this drawing of the baobabs? The reply is simple. I've tried. But with the other, I have not been successful. When I make the drawing of the baobabs, I was carried beyond myself by the inspiring force of urgent necessity. 苏西晚上好 ，YDS 晚上好，林安彤吗？林彦彤吗？初见安晚上好，早睡早起身体好，确定吗？我不相信你们听完哄睡台中马上就会睡着，我不相信。等一下哦。OK， 然后 Chapter 6， 对吗？不会吗？我就知道，该熬的还是得熬。 对啊，我懂没事，现在先培养一下困意，储存一下困意先，对吧？怎么会不会呢？ OK， 先听着吧。等一下打开 DC 群，看还有没有人在里面挂着。梁荣章，晚上好。Okay, you ready? Chapter 6. 其实我自己听这个 BGM 我真的听得快睡着了。我自己听这个 BGM 我真的听得快睡着了。我觉得我今天跳这个 BGM 还不错，它上面是写着无版权没有错，希望等一下直播结束之后，这个档真的是如他所说的无版权，不要背刺我。哄睡台原来是把自己哄睡，对。8条 BGM 很赞，找得好吧？找很久这个 BGM。OK， 喝口水。好。The Little Prince, Chapter 6. Oh, little prince, bit by bit I came to understand the secret of your sad little life. For a long time you had found your only entertainment in the quiet pleasure of looking at the sunset. I learned that new detail on the morning of the... 我们等一下重新念，但是我现在想要先把我的舌头纠正过来。我不知道我今天的舌头是怎么回事，有一种不会讲英文的感觉。我今天的舌头，别人的舌头画画了，好奇怪的舌头。我 feel 到我今天的舌头和我的嘴唇好像是互不认识的感觉。就是现在就连我现在在讲中文，我可以 feel 得到我今天的嘴唇不是非常灵活，我不知道是为什么，好奇怪哦，好奇怪的嘴巴。OK， 那念。The Little Prince, Chapter 6. Oh, little prince, bit by bit I came to understand the secrets of your sad little life. For a long time you have found your only entertainment in the quiet pleasure of looking at the sunset. I learned that new detail on the morning of the fourth day when you said to me, I'm very fond of sunset. Come, let us go look at the sunset now. But we must wait, I said. Wait? For what? For the sunset. We must wait until it's time. At first, you seemed to be very surprised, and then you laughed to yourself, said to me, I am always thinking that I'm at home. Just so everybody knows that when it is noon in the United States, the sun is setting over France. If you could fly to France in 1 minute, you can go straight into the sunset, right from noon. Unfortunately, France is too far for that. But on your tiny planet, my little prince, all you need to do is move your chair a few steps. You can see the day end and the twilight falling whenever you like. One day, you said to me, I saw the sunset 44 times. And a little later you added, one loves the sunset and one is so sad. Were you so sad then? I asked. On the day of the 44th sunset? But the little prince made no reply. I really是很想要把我的舌头捋直。44第7章，我讲44，我就在想我是要讲44还是44。我觉得44比较好讲，但是呢，我好像整篇又是44，好奇怪哦。我舌头它有自己的想法，算了吧，不管了。林海伦安，晚上好。拉一拉，怎么样拉一拉？扯一下，应该这样子，扯一扯我的舌头，好，扯一扯，看它有没有捋直。The Little Prince, Chapter 7. On the 5th day, again, as always, it was thanks to the ship. The secret of the little prince's life was revealed to me, abruptly, without anything to lead up to it. And, as if the question had been born of long and silent meditations on this problem, he demanded, "A ship, if it eats little bushes, does it eat flowers too?" "A ship," I answered, "eats anything it finds in its reach." "Even flowers that have thorns?" "Yes, even flowers that have thorns." "Then the thorns, what use are they?" I did not know. At that moment, I was very busy trying to unscrew a bolt that had got stuck in my engine. I was very much worried, for it was becoming clear to me that the breakdown of my plane was extremely serious, and I had so little drinking water left that after I had to fear for the worst. "The thorns, what use are they?" The little prince never let go of the question. Once he asked it, as for me, I was upset over the bot. And I answered with the first thing that came in my mind. The thrones are of not use at all. Flower has thorn just for spite. "Oh," he replied. There was a moment of complete silence. Then the little prince flashed back at me with a kind of resentfulness. "I don't believe you. Flowers are weak creatures. They're naive. They reassure themselves as best they can. They believe that their thrones are terrible weapons." I did not answer. At that instant, I was saying to myself, if this world still won't turn, I'm going to knock it out with a hammer. Again, the little prince disturbed my thoughts. "And you actually believe that the flowers..." "Oh no," I cried. No, I don't believe anything. I answered you with the first thing that came into my head. Don't you see? I'm very busy with a matter of consequence." He stared at me, thunderstruck. "Matters of consequence?" He looked at me there, with my hammer with my hammer in my hand. My finger black with anger and grease, bending down over an object which seems to him extremely ugly. "You talk just like the grown-ups." That made me a little ashamed, But he went on relentlessly. You mix everything up together. You confuse everything. He was really very angry. He tossed his golden curl in the breeze. I know a planet where there's a certain red-faced gentleman who has never smelled a flower. He has never looked at a star. He has never loved anyone. He has never done anything in his life but add up figures. And all days he says over and over, just like you, I am busy with matter of a consequence. And that makes him swell up with pride. But he's not a man. He's a mushroom. A what? A mushroom. The little prince was so white with rage. The flower has been grown through for millions of years. For millions of years, the sheep have been eating them just the same. And it's not matter of a consequence to try to understand why flowers go to so much trouble to grow thrones which are never of use to them. Is the welfare between the sheep and the flowers not important? It is not of more consequence than a fat rat-faced gentleman's sons. And if I know, I, myself, one flower which is unique in the world, which grows nowhere but on my planet, but which one little sheep can destroy a single bite some morning without even noticing what it's doing. Oh, you think that is not important? 感谢喝这样的3选，ありがとう，安晚上好。His face turned from white to red as he continued. If someone loves a flower, of which just one single blossom grows in all the millions and millions of stars, it is enough to make him happy just to look at the stars. He can say to himself, somewhere my flower is there. But if the sheep eats the flower, in one moment all his star will be darkened. And you think that it is not important. He could not say anything more. His words were choked by sobbing. The night had fallen. I had let my tools drop from my hand. Of what moment now was my hammer, my bolt, or thirst, or death? On one star, one planet, my planet, the earth, there was a little prince to be comforted. I took him in my arms and rocked at him. I said to him, the flower that you love is not danger. I will draw you a muzzle for your sheep. I will draw you a railing to pull around your flower. I did not know what to say to him. I feel awkward and blundering. I did not know how I could reach him, where I could overtake him and go on hand in hand with him once more. It is such a secret place, the land of tears. 第8章 Hello Rixme Hello 阿雷利安，晚上好。英語がとても上手です。声も落ち着くフィキです。日本人じゃないんでしょうね。日本人じゃないんですけど、日本語 なんかローマ字をタイプしているの何ですか？ The Little Prince, Chapter 8. I soon learned to know this flower better. On the Little Prince planet, the flower had always been very simple. They had only one ring of petals. They took up no rooms at all. They were trouble to nobody. One morning, they would appear in the grass, and by night, they would have faded peacefully away. But one day, from a seed blown from no one knew that, a new flower had come up, and the little princess watched very close over the small sprout, which was not like any other small sprouts on his planet. It might, you see, have been a new kind of baobab. The shrub soon stopped its growing and began to get ready to produce a flower. The little prince, who was present at first appearance of a huge bud, felt at once that some sort of miraculous apparition must emerge from it. But the flower is not satisfied to complete the preparations for her beauty in the shelter of his green chamber. She chose her colors with the greatest care. She dressed up herself slowly. She adjusted her petals one by one. She did not wish to go out into the world all rumpled, like the field poppies. It was only in the full radiance of her beauty that he wished to appear. Oh yes, she was a coquettish creature, and her mystery adornment lasted for days and days. That one morning, exactly at the sunrise, she suddenly showed herself. And after working with all this painstaking precision, he yawned and said, "Ah, I'm scarcely awake. I beg that you will excuse me. My petals are still disarranged." But the little prince would not restrain his admiration. "Oh, how beautiful you are." "Am I not?" the flower responded sweetly. "And I was born at the same moment as the sun." The little prince could guess easily enough that she was not any too modest, but how moving and exciting she was. "I think it is time for breakfast," she added an instant later. 完蛋了，我要戴个眼镜。等一下，戴个眼镜好了。可以把 later 看成 letter， 我也是老眼昏花了。"If you would have the kindness to think of my needs." And the little prince, completely abashed, went to look for a sprinkling can of fresh water, so he tended the flower. So too, she began very quickly to torment him with her vanity, which was, if the truth be known, a little difficult to deal with. One day, for instance, when she was speaking of her 4 thorns, he said to the little prince, "Let the tigers come with their claws." There are no tigers on my planet, the little prince objected. And anyway, tigers do not eat weeds. I'm not a weed, the flower replied sweetly. Please excuse me. I am not at all afraid of tiger, she went on. But I have a horror of drafts. I suppose you won't have a screen for me? A horror of drafts. That is bad luck for a plant, remarked the little prince, and added to himself, this flower is very complex creature. At night, I want you to put me under a glass globe. It is very cold where you live, in the place I came from. But she interrupted herself at that point. She had come in a form of seed. She could not have known anything of any other words. Embarrassed over having let her be caught on the verge of such a naive untruth, she caught 2 or 3 times in order to put the little prince in the wrong. The screen. I was just going to look for it when you spoke to me. Then she forced her card a little more so that he should suffer from remorse just the same. So the little prince, in spite of all good, will that was inseparable from his love, had soon come to doubt her. He had taken seriously words and which were without importance, and it made him very unhappy. I ought not to have listened to her, he confided to me one day. One never ought to listen to the flower. One should simply look at them and brave their fragrance. Mine perfumed all my planet, but I did not know how to take pleasure in all her grace. This tale of clouds, which disturbed me so much, and should only have filled my heart with tenderness and pity. And as continues his confidences, the fact is that I did not know how to understand anything. I ought to have judged by seed and not by words. He cast her fragrance and her radiance over me. I ought never to run away from her. I ought to guess all the affection that lay behind her full statement. Flowers are so inconsistent, but I was too young to know how to love her. 舌头打结了。第9章，我们念到第10章的稍后结束。对，原来不是在哄大家睡觉，其实是在哄我睡觉了。那你知道我原本想要干嘛吗？我原本想要开完周表牌的哄睡台之后，我们去图奇玩打扫尸体游戏。我原本是这样想的。What do you think? 效果拔群，你是说什么的效果拔群？看来是玩上瘾了，很想玩欸。昨天一直心心念念想说今天要玩一下。 这不是急不急的问题，是我想不想玩而已。Next one, The Little Prince, Chapter 9. I believe that for his escape, he took advantage of the migration of the flock of wild birds. On the morning of his departure, he put his planet in perfect order. He carefully cleaned out his active volcanoes. He possessed 2 active volcanoes, and they were very convenient for heating his breakfast in the morning. He also had 1 volcano that was extinct, but as he said, one never knows. So he cleaned out the extinct volcano too. If they were well cleaned out, volcanoes burn slowly and steadily without any eruptions. Volcanic eruptions are like fires in chimney. On Earth, we obviously much too small to clean out our volcanoes. That is why they bring no end of trouble upon us. The little prince also pulled up, with a certain sense of dejection, the last little shoots of the baobabs. He believed that he would never want to return. But on this last morning, all this familiar dust seems very precious to him. And when he watered the flower for the last time and prepared to place her under the shelter of her glass globe, he realized that he was very close to tears. "Goodbye," he said to the flower, but she made no answer. "Goodbye," he said again. The flower caught, but it was not because he had a cold. "I've been silly," she said to him. "At last, I ask your forgiveness. Try to be happy." He was surprised by the absence of reproaches. He stood there, all bewildered. The glass globe held arrested in mid-air. He did not understand this quiet sweetness. "Of course I love you," the flower said to him. "It is my fault that you have not known it all the while. That is of no importance, but you have been just as foolish as I. Try to be happy, let the glass globe be. I don't want it anymore." "But the wind, my cold is not so bad as all that. The cool night air will do me good. I'm a flower. But the animals, well, I must endure the presence of 2 or 3 caterpillars if I wish to become acquainted with the butterflies. It seems that they're all very beautiful, and if not the butterflies and the caterpillars, who will call upon me? You will be far away. As for the large animals, I am not at all afraid of any of them. I have my claws." And naively, she showed her 4 thorns. Then she added, "Don't linger like this. You have decided to go away. Now, go." But she did not want him to see her crying. She was such a proud flower. 这的安安上好，第10章。不然周日边广东话边玩，没有你不懂，我是现在想玩。最后一章 Chapter 10. He found himself in the neighborhood of the Asteroid 325, 326, 327, 328, 329, and 330. He began, therefore, by visiting them in order to add to his knowledge. The first of them was inhabited by the king, clad in royal purple and ermine. He was seated upon the throne, which was at the same time both simple and majestic. "Ah, here's the subject," exclaimed the king, when he saw the little prince coming. And the little prince asked himself, how could he recognize me when he had never seen me before? He didn't know how the word is simplified for the kings. To them, all men are subjects. "Approach, so that I may see you better," said the king, who felt consumingly proud of being at last a king over somebody. The little prince looked everywhere to find a place to sit down, but the entire planet was crammed and obstructed by the king's magnificent ermine robe. So he remained standing upright, and since he was tired, he yawned. It is contrary to antique to yawn in this presence of king. The monarch said to him, "I forbid you to do so." "I can't help it. I can't stop myself," replied the little prince, thoroughly embarrassed. "I have come on a long journey and I have had no sleep." "Ah, then," the king said, "I order you to yawn. It is years since I have seen anyone yawning. Yawns, to me, are objects of curiosity. Come, now, yawn again, and it is in order." "That frightens me. I cannot anymore," murmured the little prince, now completely abashed. Replied the king. "Then I order you sometimes to yawn, and sometime to..." He sputtered a little and seemed vexed. For what the king fundamentally insisted upon was that his authority should be respected. He tolerated no disobedience. He was an absolutely monarch, but because he was a very good man, he made his order reasonable. "And if I order a general," he would say, by way of example, "if I order a general to change himself into a seabird, and if the general did not obey me, then it would not be the fault of the general, it would be my fault." "May I sit down?" came now a timid inquiry from the little prince. "I order you to do so," the king answered him, and majestically gathered in a fold of his ermine mantle. Ermine 还是 ermine 呢？其实我纠结的这个字好久哦。是 ermine 呢？OK， ermine， 念到哪里了？ ermine mantle。 But the little prince was wondering. The planet was tiny. Over what could this king really rule? "Sire," he said to him, "I beg you will excuse my asking you a question. I order you to ask me a question." The king hastened to assure him. "Sire, over what do you rule?" "Over everything," said the king with magnificent simplicity. "Over everything." The king made a gesture which took in this planet, the other planets, and all the stars. "Over all that?" asked the little prince. "Over all that," the king answered. For his rule was not too absolute, it was also universal. "And the stars obey you?" "Certainly they do," the king said. "They obey instantly. I do not permit insubordination." Such power was a thing for little prince to marvel at. If he had been master of such complete authority, he would have been able to watch the sunset, not 44 times in one day, but 72 or even 100 or even 200 times without ever having to move his chair. And because he felt a bit sad as he remembered his little planet which he had forsaken, he plucked up his courage to ask the king of Ava, "I would like to see a sunset. Do me that kindness, order the sun to set." "If I order a general to fly from one flower to another like a butterfly, or to write a tragic drama, or to change himself into a seabird, and if the general did not carry out the order that he had received, which one of us would be in wrong?" the king demanded. "The general or myself?" "You," said the little prince firmly. "Exactly. One must require from each one the duty which each one can perform. The king went on. "Accepted authority rests first of all on reason. If you order your people to go and throw themselves into the sea, they would rise up in revolution. I have the right to require obedience because my orders are unreasonable." "Then my sunset," the little prince reminded him, for he never forgot the questions when he had asked it. You shall have your sunset. I shall command it. But according to my science of government, I shall wait until the conditions are favorable." "When will that be?" replied the little prince. Replied the king, and before saying anything else, he consulted the book. Almanic's neck. That would be that would be this evening about 20 minutes till 8, and you will see how well I am obeyed. The little prince yawned. He was regretting his lost sunset. And then too, he was already beginning to be a little bored. "I have nothing more to do here," he said to the king. "So I shall set out on my way again." "Do not go," said the king, who was very proud of having a subject. "Do not go. I will make you a minister." "Minister of what?" minister of justice. But there is nobody here to judge. We do not know that, the king said to him. I have not made a complete tour of my kingdom. I am very old. There is no room here for carriage, and it tires me to walk. Oh, but I have looked already, said the little prince, turning around to give one more glance to the other side of the planet. And on that side, as on this, there was nobody at all. Then you judge yourself, the king answered. That is the most difficult thing of all. It is much more difficult to judge oneself than to judge another's. If you succeed in judging yourself rightly, then you are indeed a man of true wisdom. Yes, said the little prince, but I can judge myself anywhere. I do not need to live on this planet. Said the king. I have a good reason to believe that somewhere on my planet there is an old rat. I hear him at night. You can judge this old rat. From time to time, you will condemn him to death. Thus, his life would depend on your justice, but you will pardon him on each occasion, where he must be treated trivially. He is the only one we have. I, said the little prince, do not like to condemn anyone to death, and now I think I will go on my way. No, said the king, but the little prince, having now completed his preparations for departure, had no wish to grieve the old monarch. If your majesty wishes to be promptly obeyed, he said, he should be able to give me a reasonable order. He should be able, for example, to order me to be gone by the end of 1 minute. It seems to me that conditions are favorable. As the king made no answer, the little prince hesitated a moment. Then, with a sigh, he took his leave. I make you my ambassador, the king called out, hastily. He had a magnificent air of authority. The grown-ups are very strange, the little prince said to himself as he continued on his journey. 第10章念完啦，醒了吗？醒了吗？醒了吗？醒了吗？醒了吗？ Hello， 影业安，晚上好。金德兰安，晚上好。陈明安，晚上好。不是绿宝石，绿宝石是 Emerald。我是在说翡翠才是 Emerald。我在说那个什么 Armin 貂哦，好像是貂皮貂毛貂毛貂皮，对。醒得太好了，我们要不要去玩半小时的？我们去玩半小时的那个好不好？我们现在转战突击，我们去玩半小时的捡尸体游戏。我要去捡尸体，不管，引犯了，捡尸体好好玩，就让我打扫1层好了，1层之后就睡。我们去捡尸体 ，Let's go， Let's go。晚安， 我先把我的台纸打开，捡尸体。Oh shit， 希望你没有听到我打嗝。我有点忘记那个捡尸体游戏叫什么来着 ？Crime Scene Cleaner， 找到了。好，走吧。是不是我的体感半小时？哪有啊 ？Let's go。晚安。没有听到就好，没有听到就好。如果你要早睡觉的话，那就早点睡吧。晚安。